Joining us now to discuss all of this is Pennsylvania Congressman Guy Reschenthaler. He's a member of the Judiciary Committee, Foreign Affairs Committee, and he is a veteran of the Iraq War. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. I want to ask your view. Do you think I'm being too harsh by saying that this month of August, when we look at the economy and inflation, when we look at the border and then the Afghanistan situation, am I being too harsh to say that this is so far, this August, is the worst month for any president in American history?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on, and please just call me Guy. But no, you're not being too harsh. I have said that after this debacle, and I'm just talking about the surrender of Afghanistan, Joe Biden should step down. He should resign. He has proven he's not fit to be president, and he has forfeited the right to lead this nation. Now, if you just take a step back and look at the other issues that you mentioned, runaway inflation, we have chaos on the southern border. Remember, we also had cyber attacks on American industry that shut down a major pipeline. This has been disastrous from start to finish. And you were going through the polling data earlier. I would submit to you that if the legacy media, the far left media, accurately reported the Biden administration, those numbers would have been far worse leading up to the disaster in Afghanistan. It would certainly be worse now. Thankfully, we have outlets like Newsmax and other media sources that can expose the truth, but it has gotten so bad that even the legacy media cannot hide the disaster that is the Biden administration.
And Guy, speaking of the media, President Biden finally took some questions from them today. It was highly anticipated. It was really shocking that he had not taken questions prior to this afternoon when he did. And a lot of people wondering how much he knows, how, on top of things he is during this crisis. Let's take a listen to what Congressman Massey had to say on Newsmax earlier today.
There seems to be a disparity between what the two secretaries are saying and what the president is reporting. For instance, we heard on that call that Americans were beaten by the Taliban in their travel to get to the airport or in an effort to evacuate. That seemed to be news that the president hadn't acknowledged yet.
And so Biden hasn't reported this. A lot of people wondering, is he lying to the American people or is he just completely disconnected? What are your thoughts?
I would submit to you that it's both. He is disconnected from reality, and he has been lying to the American people. There are numerous statements that Joe Biden has made in the last week that contradict statements that he has made within days of each other. Additionally, today, just as Representative Massey was talking about, Joe Biden took the stage and talked to the American people. Minutes later, we were briefed, members of Congress were briefed by General Milley, General Austin, and Secretary Blinken. Those three actually contradicted information that President Biden had given us just moments before on live TV. It was quite astounding. When I was listening to that briefing, it was like the Biden administration was living in a parallel universe or some kind of detached reality. All they kept talking about was what's happening to the individuals after they get to the airport. What was not being addressed was how we're going to get the Americans, and countless Americans, I might say, and I'll get to that in a second, but how we're going to get all the Americans and all our allies that are beyond the airport, that are trapped literally behind enemy lines, not being able to get through checkpoints. I said countless Americans because during that call, my good friend Stephanie Bice asked the three individuals that were briefing us, again, Secretary Blinken, Secretary Austin, and General Milley, how many Americans are behind enemy lines. It was crickets. They said, we're going to have to get back to you. This is absolute dereliction of duty. All three of them should resign, and so should Joe Biden. This is one of the saddest days, one of the saddest events for America. And I can tell you, this is going to have long-term ramifications for the United States, for our prestige in the world, for our understanding of how we project power abroad for decades. It's beyond Afghanistan. This is really going to damage us moving forward.
Sure. And, Guy, I think it's important. Unfortunately, you're mentioning it, that we shouldn't hold our breath for accountability. They should be held accountable. And you're right, these people should be resigning, but I don't think it's going to happen soon. And part of why I don't think that is, you also mentioned sort of detached reality or alternative reality. Let's watch a tape here of Joe Biden doing an interview with George Stephanopoulos. It's the only serious sit-down, lengthy interview that he has done since this entire crisis began. And, of course, he chose to do it with a guy who just happened to be the comms director for Bill Clinton. But let's have a listen.
Back in July, you said a Taliban takeover was highly unlikely. Was the intelligence wrong, or did you downplay it?
I think there was no consensus. If you go back and look at the intelligence reports, they said that it was more likely to be sometime by the end of the year.
You didn't put a timeline out when you said it was highly unlikely. You just said flat out it's highly unlikely the Taliban would take over.
Yeah.
So, Guy, listen, watching that tape, that does not encourage me that this is a commander-in-chief who is willing to be brutally honest about his own predictions, nor is he willing to really hold accountable those who work for him and essentially for us.
No, this entire presidency has been a bait and switch. Remember, this is the guy that hid in his basement, refusing to talk to the press, refusing to come out and take direct questions. And now he's the president. And he promised he was going to be the most transparent president in history. Yet he evades the press still, literally runs off the stage while the press is shouting questions at him. This is shameful. And he also stands on the stage and gaslights the American people. Case in point, when he stands there and says the buck stops here, yet proceeds to go on and on about how this is everyone's fault except his. When he stands up and says that our Afghan allies refuse to fight, yet we know that they have taken literally tens of thousands of casualties in the last few years, that is gaslighting the American people. He is unfit to lead. I don't care if he's lying. I don't care if he doesn't know what's going on. This is an issue that needs to be addressed by Joe Biden resigning. And I'm calling for it. I'm also calling, like I said, for Milley, Austin, and Blinken all to resign, and Jake Sullivan.
Well, you know, it's a scary thought when you think about Biden resigning and the number 2 and 3 in line, unfortunately, if that were to be the case. But, Congressman, I want to ask you, what would you like to see in terms of a commitment from the president in getting these Americans home, who are essentially held hostage right now by the Taliban? They've got this gauntlet of Taliban checkpoints to try and get through to get to the airport, and they're not getting there. What would you like to hear from him?
Well, I'd like him to come out and say we're not going to leave until every American citizen is safe, until every ally of the United States forces is also safe. And I want him to say that we will, to quote JFK, pay any price, bear any burden to make sure that mission is accomplished. He has yet to say that. In fact, he says quite the opposite when he says that he cannot guarantee that every American will be safe. And I can tell you today in that briefing, we were told by General Milley and General Austin that they think this situation will deteriorate. Well, if it's going to deteriorate, send in more troops, send in more special forces. Make sure that you take control of the situation. We should be retaking the Bagram Air Base immediately. We should never have given it up, but we certainly should be back there securing that area. It would be much easier to secure a military base than it is a civilian airport, especially one that's in the third world. Totally inexcusable. And to go back to accountability, and just to tie this in with the poll numbers that you gave at the beginning of the segment, there is one way to make sure Joe Biden is held accountable, and that is for the Republicans to take back the House in 22. Then we will have oversight ability. We will also have the ability, if we choose to impeach the president. But all this is for naught if we don't take back the House and the Senate in 2022, because the Democrats will continue to refuse to hold Joe Biden accountable, and they'll continue to rally around his side.
Congressman, I am confident at this point we will take it back, given all that we've been through in just 8 months. Congressman Reschenthaler, thank you so much for your service, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me on. Take care.